Bonjour à tous. Cette semaine sur Scrum Life, on a eu l'immense plaisir de recevoir Maarten Dalmijn. Donc on a fait une interview, on a parlé des product goals, des sprint goals. C'était l'occasion d'échanger aussi avec lui. Et le jeudi, comme d'habitude, on fait le live hebdomadaire de 13h à 14h. Et ce qui est franchement top cette semaine, c'est qu'on a donc fait une interview lundi. Et jeudi, eh bien, la personne qu'on a interviewée, Maarten, eh bien, il est disponible. Donc aujourd'hui, on a Robin qui va m'accompagner et donc nous avons Maarten. Maarten is here. So that's really nice to be there with you. So yeah, je passe à l'anglais, vous m'en voudrez pas pour Maarten. I switched into English.
Excusez-moi,
And
my French is not that good.
so, voilà, voilà, vous êtes là, vous nous regardez dans le chat, vous faites comme vous pouvez, et on s'attend à ce que vous allez réussir à suivre l'anglais. Au besoin, on est là avec Robin, on fera un peu la traduction à la volée, mais ça va bien se passer. So, maybe we could start by asking you what is your feedback on the video? Are you happy of this video we made?
Oh, I'm always happy. I have to be really truthful. I never watch myself back. I hate watching myself. So that it just is awkward. I don't know. Do you watch yourself back? Maybe there's something wrong with me.
Yeah,
No,
we watch ourselves a lot.
Yeah.
And a little frustration. I don't know if it's a secret, Jean-Pierre, but we have to cut a big part of the interview, and maybe we will release a second part soon.
That's what we plan. Yeah. Actually, I don't know if that's interesting for the public, but we had kind of a main topic in the interview and then another secondary topic, and when we edit the video, we end up having two blocks of 8 to 10 minutes, which are kind of not something. So we just said we'll do two videos. And so we don't know when. We try not to get two interviews so not too close, because for the audience it may look like say, oh, I have seen this already, while it's another content.
Boring, same person again. I understand.
And that's it. So yeah, but it will happen, I think, in a few weeks, 2 months tops.
But what I can say, I really enjoyed the conversation, of course, because I remember it and it was really really fun. So thank you for that.
Yeah. So just maybe to close. So this week we talked about product goal mainly, and of course a little about sprint goal. And I think it was really interesting, because both to see the link with everything you say in the book and the link with sprint goals, but also because it's new and quite welcome. I think maybe the name is not a good thing. That was one of the things we talk about. If you're doing OKR, in a way you're doing product goals, but still that's that kind of a missing element between product vision and the more, it's strategic versus tactical. People like to use these words. And the other video, that was something that I specifically wanted to talk about about your chapter about stakeholder management versus stakeholder inclusion. And so everyone watching this, you'll love this interview when it gets out, but it's really interesting to dig into this stakeholder management side of things.
Absolutely.
All right. So people are saying hi and really happy that you're here. That's which is really good. And
super happy. Hi, Nicholas. Nicola,
how do
probably.
we proceed? I see we have quite a few comments on the video itself that we did not answer back. This is something. Everybody, just ask your questions in the chat. As usual, you can also join to. Maybe you want to talk directly to Maarten.
Maarten. Otherwise, I have some question to start. It's up to you, Jean-Pierre.
Go ahead, Robin. Just start the machine, and people will bounce back.
Of course. So, Martin, one of my hobby since a long time is, IA, artificial intelligence,
Yeah.
and but since 5 or 6 years. And so I just have a question. My question is, what do you think about the impact of IA on Scrum or on agility? Do you have any ideas?
Yeah. So how can I say? I'm not an AI expert. Let's start with that, right? What I'm going to
But
be
you're a
saying.
product expert. So I just make my question bigger.
No, I
Maybe
get it,
on
but
product development. Yeah.
I just wanted to preface that, right? So I think the main thing I'm seeing is, so for example, if you look at content, there is more Scrum and Agile content than ever. That's the feeling I have. There's so many people writing, and I think it's not them doing the writing because I can very often see. As a writer, I just recognize the writing style from ChatGPT. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you just can see. So that's the one thing I'm seeing, and which is, and on the one hand, it's good, right? I think it's good that people are trying to share. The other hand, what I'm seeing is there's way more noise. So that this is just the content and knowledge perspective. There's more noise than ever. Uh, um, but the other thing I'm seeing is a lot of hype. You know what I mean? And I think that's because 5 years back, when you were there before the big hype, right? ChatGPT is kind of like an explosion. You know what I mean? Boom! Everybody's like, "Whoa! Look how much better!" It's like a huge improvement, and I think it's very impressive. But to be honest, if I ask it questions where I'm knowledgeable about, I don't think the answers are that great. I actually think they're pretty bad. You know what I mean? To be very fair. So I think we've got a hype going on. You know what I mean? Where it looks better than it really is. So what I'm hoping for, and nobody knows how this is going to develop there. I think there maybe. So I've also been talking about this with Pavel Hurin, the product compass. So he has a different perspective than me. He really thinks within 5 years, why should I write articles? You know what I mean? The AI will do it better than me. And I am more in the camp of I don't think it will go that fast. We still have so far to go. So yeah, that's my answer in a nutshell, right? I think I'm not seeing the big impact yet, apart from a lot of noise. That's
Yeah.
my short answer.
And just to continue a little bit on
Yeah,
this
sure.
topic, Jean-Pierre, just one more question. What do you think about the practice? I see at the moment some product owners who just use IA to, for instance, to simulate user feedbacks. Instead of go on the field and take real feedback. They just use
You
IA.
said instead of, in complement
Yeah.
of.
Yeah.
In that case, which I'm thinking about, it's
So-
it's instead of, but you're right. Better
Yeah.
practice.
I don't think that works, to be honest. I haven't asked ChatGPT this question, right? But for example, the shopping cart, when it was first introduced, there was like a grocer in America introduced a shopping cart because he saw people, how do you say, they were not able to carry more, right? They were old people, they filled their bag, and it was all they could carry. And he had like the brilliant idea, what if I give them a shopping cart? Then it's no longer the size of the bag that's the bottleneck. It's no longer how strong they are that's the bottleneck. They can just put it in the cart, and then that's the bottleneck. Well, can I fit it in the cart, which is never going to. So he introduced that. And you know what happened? Nobody used it because everybody was scared of looking ridiculous. So why am I saying this? You will not discover that through ChatGPT. You know what I mean? I don't think they can simulate humans to the extent that they will tell you, like, that's the obstacle. They will maybe tell you 20 obstacles, but which is that really the problem? I would have never thought that was the problem. So what did this grocery do? He actually hired actors to push the shopping carts. And then other people saw them and like, oh, this doesn't look so ridiculous. I'm going to do it too. Great. And then it was a success. And that's the main thing. Like, you will not discover that through AI. Not yet, at least.
So the questions of Robin are not ingenious. It's because next week's video will be around this topic. So that's something running into our heads about what is the future of teams, product development, and also agile and stuff, helping those teams and those product development changes that may come because of AI, and we'll see next week. Do we get back on? I see Nicola is commenting. Do like Nicola, get into the chat. So I was wondering how we could help the Scrum team, or maybe just the product owner, or maybe the stakeholders, to express product goals instead of solutions.
Yeah, I think that's the hard question, right? It's a very good question. I think. So this is what you most often see, right? It's very easy to talk about features. We want to add in the Google Calendar integration, or we want to add this or that. And then what you usually see is that they try to reverse engineer outcomes from that, right? Oh, we've already decided this. Why are we doing this? It doesn't work that way. So we should do it the other way around. So I think the most important thing is to, I think this partially happens because when we talk about value is very abstract. You know, in a lot of business, actually, they don't spend a lot of time talking about value. They spend a lot of time talking about money. And yes, money is also like, it's a result of delivering value, but it's not value itself. Like value creation is when you make something possible. What does the feature make possible? And I think the main thing is you should do discovery. You should talk to customers, understand their pain points, understand their problems, because if you understand that, then you can create value. So the most important thing is to shift this conversation from value capture, like the business cases, you know, the money, towards more of the value creation. And I'm not saying the money isn't important. I mean, sometimes you can make these improvements which don't really create value, but they really help you capture value. But the key thing is start talking about the value creation, start doing discovery, and get the stakeholders involved in those interviews. Get them to understand like features don't deliver value, but what that feature makes possible is what gives value. And an exercise I do, right, is I do this in trainings. It's very simple. You just ask your stakeholders, what was the last product you bought? You know what I mean? And why did you buy it? And they talk about it. And then at the end of it, you ask, okay, so how much time did you spend talking about money? You know? And it is rarely, nobody almost ever mentions money. Maybe they will say it was expensive or it was value. It's maybe max 10% of the conversation. I said, okay, so if we talk about value at this company, how much of our time? And then it usually is like 80 or 90%. And that's the big disconnect. You know what I mean? Like that we should talk about.
So it's, from what you say, it's focusing on the user and putting them into this, reversing them, I said, putting themselves into the shoes of users.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what this exercise does. Like, why did you buy this product? And they don't talk, customers, of course, money matters. But if it's good enough, people will pay thousands of euros for a Leica camera because, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yes. That's a thing we see as a business too. That if the value proposition is right, it's much less about the money.
Yeah.
I see people bouncing on this. Okay, so because we were talking about ChatGPT, ask ChatGPT to infer the product goals from a list of user stories or solution and help us take then the result back to follow the product goals the right way.
See, here's the thing, right? And I'm also curious to hear your experience, but most user stories are not user stories. You know what I mean? They're just people made them up. They're not stories about the user. So then what you're actually doing is you're taking a feature and you're asking ChatGPT to summarize that feature into a goal, which means you are not going to have really a goal. And this is actually what happens in SAFe, right? If you look at the SAFe documentation, they basically say you've got outputs and we're going to summarize the outputs and then you have a goal. No, that's not how it works. Like, so I don't believe that's going to work. However, one exception, let's say you have real user stories, right? Where you really talk about the user, the problems, then you may use that to come up with the product goal. But I would be very skeptical if ChatGPT is really capable of doing that. Like, it's not that good, in my opinion.
It works the other way. It's if you have good user stories, probably that you already have a vision and so a kind of definition of value and things like that. If you are the other way around, it's less plausible. And
Yeah.
well, I wanted to react when you say most user stories are often what we call user stories are not user stories. So user stories is not French. So obviously we often we say US just the initials has a different meaning that user stories because let's put it bluntly, we are talking about Jira. When it's ticket in Jira, which Jira kind of taught everyone to call these user stories, and so it doesn't have any meaning. So we don't talk about user stories. We talk about US because it's shorter, and it's kind of like no, but that's often the case when people talk about US. It's like this stuff, and when we take the extra mile to talk about user stories, okay, so now maybe we are actually talking about the tool itself, which help us to bring empathy for the user needs and problems.
Yeah. Most user stories are user fairy tales. That's the way I always phrase it. Nobody talked to the user. They're just like rubbing their crystal ball and saying, what might the user want?
Yeah.
I have prepared some crazy questions, but I do not know if you want me to. Okay. So, Martin, I just display it, on the screen. And
Yeah.
this way I just can read it. If you could invite 3 people to dinner to discuss about product management, who would you choose and why?
Yeah. So Steve Jobs, obviously, I just find him. I mean, come on. My grandfather, because he was a very smart man. He was actually the first person to keep the human heart beating alive outside of the human body, and I just would like hijack this opportunity to meet him because he just seems like a very interesting character. Let me see. I think it's nice to discuss, to think about one person, a living person. What will be a nice living? Well, actually, no. I will go for. I need to. Dieter Rams. So I don't think he lives anymore. He's actually the person that inspired Apple with his design. He worked for Braun.
Okay.
So a lot of actually, if you look at the original Braun designs he made and the iPod designs, they are very, very similar. So I think he would be very interesting to meet, Dieter Rams.
Thanks.
I,
We have
I, I, not-
other questions on this. Yeah.
I noticed an interesting thing. It's that there are none of these people are in our usual circles. That means that people who actually do or did product management, not
Yeah.
the people working in product management stuff, but doing actually the work.
Yeah. I mean, and I also think these are just very interesting people. Like, I mean, Steve Jobs was a very nasty. He had a very nasty side. Let's put it that way. But he was also very interesting. Yeah.
So le sprinkler, which is kind of they are in Canada, in Quebec. How about once in a while the sprint goal be more meta? For example, let's be proud of our work.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, so I think that what's always should be leading is this the most valuable thing we should be doing, right? I mean, yeah, but let's say a very good situation could be, right? Let's say you've got a product with quite some technical depth. You know what I mean? It could be that you just say, hey, we're going to take one sprint to fix this module, and we give the sprint goal the title, let's be proud of our work, because we're currently not proud of our work. I mean, it makes a lot of sense to me. But let's be fair, right? If you're frequently having these let's be proud of your work sprints, you've got a big problem. Because, yeah, that should be the default. If you're not proud of your work every sprint, that's the problem you should fix. And if you need to take the meta approach to every now and then duct tape your actual problem, because that's what I would say, right? It's a duct tape solution. So yeah, it makes sense. But yeah, this is what you should watch out for, I believe.
I like it when you put it that's a message we also put in front, that you know, when you're in planning, honestly, we'll just burn this time for this many people or this kind of money. What would be the best thing to do with this investment, by the way? So we're switching to investment instead of sunk cost thinking. And oftentimes, sometimes it's not about something specific, but so Necrotech is asking what was the most difficult chapter to write in your book and why?
The final chapter, I would say, right? I think so. So I think this is just one of the hardest things because let me give you a good example. Game of Thrones, the series, right? Everybody was unhappy with the ending, and I think it's really hard to get well. And I don't know if I've pulled it off, right? I did my best, but I wanted to write an ending chapter where I kind of brought everything together and then kind of like made people feel like it was a cohesive whole. You know what I mean? With maybe an interesting ending. That's the most difficult part because there's a lot of research done that people actually remember two things. And they actually did this research with how do you say, giving people pain shocks, you know what I mean? So what they discovered is if you give people like electrical shocks and you let them experience pain, there are two things they remember. So they don't remember that it took 3 hours or 4 hours. That's not what they remember. They remember the peak, so the most painful time, and the ending. That's what people ultimately remember. So it's called peak end theory, and that's why that's what I spent a lot of time on. I spent a lot of time on the beginning, obviously, to get people hooked, the ending, because that's what people are going to be remember, and how do you connect everything in between in a logical thing. So
I like the analogy with Game of Thrones because maybe the first chapters of your book are too good. So not to say the rest is bad, but it's kind of less good.
Yeah.
Don't take it bad.
True.
And can you tell the Scrum Life community where they can find and buy your book, maybe? I know. Wow, where do you prefer they buy it? Because
so I'm going to give you a simple answer. I prefer that you buy it at the place that is most convenient for you. Books don't make you any money. Like, don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Maybe if you're like Malcolm Gladwell, you know, and you can negotiate very nice royalties, but you don't write a book to earn money from it. I'm earning money from the talks and the workshops that follow. That's where the money comes from. The book is, as we say, a loss leader. So Costco, you know, they have a $1 hot dog, which they sell in the store. Everybody comes for the hot dog. They burn so much money on it. But then they walk out with a TV, and that's when they make money. So that's why I say a book is a loss leader. So buy it, what's most convenient. Amazon, Barnes and Noble has it. It depends on your country. Amazon, France, I assume has it. So.
Yeah, and definitely, at least in more niche stuff, it's as a writer, it's your resume. Yeah, you know, after maybe I think you did that also in your LinkedIn profile. You wrote this book, and it's really what we saw. So it's not the book itself which make a lot of money for you. It's the way people know about it and know about you. So what about Simon Sinek's Golden Circle? Is it still relevant in today's context, or should we move to something else?
So I think it's still relevant, right? I have to be frank. I never revert to Simon Sinek's Golden Circle. That doesn't mean it's bad. I think it's really good but the thing is, the idea of the Golden Circle, like start with the why, that's actually what they do in the military. You know, in the military, they always start with the why, because every mission, they start with the commander's intent. What are we trying to achieve and why does it matter? Like why, you know, and the relevant context for the why. For me, it's the same thing. Like, and of course, Simon Sinek is amazing at telling stories and explaining it. So the Golden Circle is a very good way. But the problem is almost everyone knows it, you know what I mean? And that's what I think is always the risk. If you explain something people already know, they will already have their own impression of it. It's the same reason why I don't really use the word agile at all, because you just don't know what they already believe or think about it. And if you start with something which is more unusual, then you have a fresh perspective. You start fresh, you can control the narrative. If you start something which is as popular as that, for example, talking about OKRs, then you're not really controlling the narrative, or even Scrum, people have all these. So that's why I don't do it.
Something I want to add, because when we talk about user stories, something we strongly recommend, so the well-known way of writing user stories, it's as some kind of user, I wish or I want to do something in order to, and so on. And we tell people to start with in order to.
Yeah.
And it really, really taints differently everything to start with why. And even the same user story is not the same at all when you start saying so or maybe the second, because you may want to start stating which persona is it about, but first of all, what is the pain point? What do we want to truly achieve? What value do we want to get out of that before getting into what do I wish?
You're welcome. So one thing I always wanted to add, right? So the way you frame the problem has a huge impact on the solution. And I recently stumbled on this urban legend. I mean, it's an urban legend, to be frank, but there is some articles backing it up. So I couldn't find the original source, so I'm still calling it an urban legend. But actually, almost all elevators nowadays have mirrors. Why do they have mirrors? It's because in a hotel in New York, they actually discovered that, people were complaining a lot because the elevators were slow. And they wanted to fix it, but they couldn't fix it, because it was too expensive. And then there was one person, a psychology student, who said, the problem isn't that the elevators are slow. The problem is that they're bored while waiting for the elevator. So what if we add mirrors to the elevator so they can look at themselves, look if they look good, and then they have something to do. And then they installed elevators and the mirrors in the elevators, and all the complaints evaporated because people were just looking at how they looked, doing their hair, and the elevators were still slow, but it didn't matter. They had something to do.
This is a great anecdote.
I think it was about what we said about, taking the sprint as an investment. That's also an interesting way to put it. What would happen? What would we deliver if it was the last sprint, which kind of pressure us to think about what is really something with an outcome.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I think that's a very interesting question. So this is basically a constraint. You know what I mean? That you're saying you've got one sprint, the curtains are going to drop, it's going to be over, game over. What do we do to go out with a bang? Like money is up, money runs out. This is the only shot we have to survive. What are we going to do? I mean, I think that framing is kind of like a constraint, like you've got one sprint, that's it. And I think that's very constraints are super powerful. Like a lot of inventions happen because someone, for Elon Musk for example, is a really good example. He forces a lot of constraints. He just says, no, we're not going to do it this way. It has to be 50% cheaper. Go figure it out, And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but it forces you to really consider what is, the famous example is with the rockets, right? He made an Excel calculation how much it costs. And then he realized, we could do it a lot cheaper. And if we make it reusable, then it's going to be even way. And then these kind of things are like really good examples of constraints where you're like really thinking, what is the thing that determines the cost? What is the constraint and how can we work around it to the best way?
That was something that we talked about in the interview on Monday, the value of adding some time constraints. And I think this kind of questions also leads to the way of thinking we may have in a more startup, like, when you don't know if you will have enough money, if you will live long enough. So you have to bring something enough so that you can leverage more money and more money and more money. And so you always, that's something we discuss a lot also with Robin about wartime mindset versus peacetime mindset. And just, we don't have the luxury to wait. We will die if we don't have a solution. So that's a thing. And the other thing is, we also like to say a lot that a lot of people use interchangeably iteration and sprint, while actually it's not the same thing. A sprint should be various iteration, like you do kind of an MVP of the sprint goal, and you discover more, and you refine, and you go, and so on. And it's also a way to go this route, because if we have only 1 week or 2 weeks to reach this goal, how do we make sure that after 1 day already, we can see if the compass goes closer or farther from where we should be in 1 or 2 weeks from now?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And what's very interesting, I'm actually currently writing an article about Valve Software. So Valve Software is like they're probably one of the richest tech companies in the world. In 2008, they were per employee making the most money. They created the game Half-Life, Half-Life 2, all these But what's very interesting is what you're describing now is exactly what they're doing. So if they, for example, make a level, they will just make 15 minutes, and they will make sure the textures are orange. It looks hideous. And they immediately just put someone behind it, like someone to play test it. Okay, you're going to use it. Tell us what you think. Oh, not even tell us what you think. You're just going to watch. You're just going to let the person play. And then...
True feedback.
Yeah. And for example, they tell the story of once they had made a level, and there was this person, for 1 hour, he was going like through a maze every time to the left, but he had to turn to the right, or maybe it was the other way around. And they were sitting there like, very painful, but they fixed it, and this is the really their culture. They're like, you're fun, you cannot predict that. You need to see it happen with someone who plays, and that's their culture. And I think they're doing exactly what you're saying. They said they spend 1 week to make something, they play test it, they adjust it, play test. That's how you should do it.
It would be a nice article.
Yeah. I hope so.
Given your track record, I think it will be the case.
So here's the interesting thing. I don't know when an article is good. I don't. What makes it good? Sometimes there have been articles where I'm like, oh, this is going to be the best. Nobody cares. And then I'm like, this was a lazy one and people loved it. I'm like, okay, fine. I'll take it.
I agree that's how it works, but still, in a way, we also don't take the time to really understand why.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because so this is true from articles, but we see it a lot from videos in YouTube.
Yeah.
And of course, there is trends. There is a way we put things, the way we explain. And there will see some seasons, like there are times where people are just not looking at this kind of stuff. And so in a way, we can choose to do things that are more successful, depending on what is success.
Correct.
But we don't predict it fully, of course.
No. You've got the Pixar storytelling secrets. I think following them will definitely help. But it's not a recipe, you know what I mean? You need to come up with a tasty dish, and following the recipe is not good enough, unfortunately.
Yeah, plus a lot of kind of systemic element. When you're on a trend, if you have views, you get more views and things like that. But if you break this trend, and so there's a lot of things like that.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I'm also curious to your perspective, right? But in the beginning, when you started out with this, you were probably working very hard, you know what I mean? And it was very difficult because people don't know you. And now it's kind of like you've got an audience, and it actually it's easier, you know what I mean? Because you already have people. No.
Well, it depends because the goals and the expectations have changed.
Yeah, they're higher. I
At
mean.
at the beginning, I was not necessarily expecting much outside of sharing.
Yeah.
So I mean, like a single comment, be it in YouTube or in person or whatever, telling me it's wonderful and useful, was good enough. But now, when your audience grow, you also expect to have more views and so on. So it's an endless circle of
Yeah.
you're never happy with whatever you get, which is something you can work on yourself, of course. And it's not the same goals because now it's kind of the entry point of business. We are still sharing. Mainly we share, but it's like you say, the goal is not to make money, but if we don't have money, we can't do everything we want to do. So in a way, we can't just do anything and say whatever because we want it to keep the everything
Understand.
running. So it's just not the same, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I understand. But I think it's also different. Like I'm doing everything alone, which is in a way difficult, you know what I mean? Because you're alone. But on the other hand, I don't have an office. I don't have employees. You know what I mean? Like it's or people who also need to get paid. So it's easier in that sense. Like yeah, because yeah.
I see there are several comments.
Yeah.
You have seen one, Robin?
No, I was just thinking
let me
about...
watch the comments. I didn't even open it. I was just watching the private chat. Sorry, I'm a bit
That's
slow.
okay. We just look at what people say and we put there forward. But
Yeah,
Speaking
so
about
somebody
the...
posted the Valve employee handbook. So that's interesting. So that's exactly what I'm reading. So
Yeah.
I also want to say that there's this very nice article by an presentation by an ex-Valve employee where they really talk about the development process behind Half-Life. I don't know if it was Half-Life 1 or Half-Life 2. Maybe it was both. I think it was Ken Birdwell. So you can easily find it if you Google Ken Birdwell
Yes.
Valve presentation. Maybe I'll just join the chat and I'll add it. I need to be on YouTube. Anyhow, doesn't matter.
Yeah. I looked for to this handbook recently, and I found it very, very, very easily. And yes, it's interesting to understand that it did not pop up out from nowhere. Because the development of Half-Life, which is kind of the beginning
Yeah.
of Valve, it was very long and very rocky.
It was a nightmare,
so-
basically.
Yeah, so I can relate to that. I know one of the most of my blog posts are about one specific team I was helping, and at some point there was really some kind of trauma.
Yeah.
Like they really went through something with this mind of we don't want to live this again, and so that really helped to define a lot of new processes, new development practices, new way of communicating, new way of organizing ourselves, and to really do it, not just some incremental improvement and something we do it if we find time.
Yeah.
No, really, really important, and that's what led. So I think the end of the development of Half-Life 1 was already, for the most part, this cabal system they designed.
Correct.
But from the at least first half, maybe more, they was really trying a lot of stuff, inspiring from what they lived before, which was kind of not really original. Like they came from Microsoft and they did Teams or everyone working in their way. And then maybe they just adjusted it. But, again, it's easy to just see and say, wow, they are so good. Well, they learned it the hard way and they iterated to get there.
So an interesting fact about Valve is that all the desks have wheels because the Valve employees can choose which team they work on. And that's kind of like how the system works. They choose their own project, they decide on their own games. And if other people want to join, it's probably a good sign. And that's very weird. Like I've never worked at such a company, but it's really that's at least what they. I also want to stress, right? This is what they communicate to the outside world. We all know the Spotify model. I don't know the reality. I've actually tried reaching out to Valve because I wanted to interview some of their people just to understand the cable way of working. Never succeeded. So I even sent a message to Gabe. So maybe a fun fact, when I was 16, I sent a message to Gabe and he responded. Well, nowadays he doesn't respond anymore, but back then he did.
Yeah, yeah, that's interesting, and I think when we talk about Tesla and SpaceX, and so on, especially when we talk about justice, we have seen it firsthand and shares a lot about it. That's kind of the thing we find, that the day-to-day is more like an open space, the open space technology where you just choose your topic and work like that. And this, it's like, how can that work? Nobody does that. Well, if you dig enough, you find other way, and Valve is such an example. Maybe less day-to-day team switching, but still, that's the main idea. Pick what you believe in, or propose something, and which really creates a very different way of ownership.
Yeah, correct.
Because you choose what you worked on, or you had to convince other people to work with you. Like you must be the community manager of your own project inside the company.
Yeah, and as well, like if you only do projects that don't bring in money, you're gonna lose your job. So there's a really skin in the game element to it.
That's true.
Another crazy question you want?
Go ahead,
Okay.
Robin.
So speaking about Half-Life, well, I don't know if there is some time travel in Half-Life. I do not remember it. But if you could go back in time and give you an advice, to the younger Maarten, what would it be?
Yeah. Let me think about it.
Crazy questions are hard.
Yeah. My advice would be work less hard. You know what I mean? So this may sound weird, but I'm somebody who takes a lot of ownership and responsibility, which is, in one hand, it's good, right? But if you want to be a leader, then it's not about you taking the ownership. And especially as a product owner, how do you get the team to take more ownership for delivering value? And that's kind of the transition I made, where actually I kind of went from more like a command and control style, you know what I mean? I mean, I'm saying it very black and white. I was never really that way, but I was kind of like, I would go into refinement, everything perfectly prepared, spent a lot of time on it, had thought everything out. But that means that whatever we decide to do is constrained by my imagination, my intellect. So it's not that good. So basically, the transition I made is more like going into refinement and really focusing on what we said before. Why? What are we trying to achieve? I would also think a little bit ahead, you know what I mean? Because I want to guide and facilitate the conversation. But I would just ask them, like, hey, given that this is what we're trying to achieve and this is the relevant context, what is the best solution? What is the best way of doing this? And then you get a better solution. Everybody's engaged. So, and people are curious instead of sitting here laid back, like, oh, Maarten is going to tell us what to do. Great. I can just sit back.
Yeah, and that's something will be. So yeah, of course, it's true. It's better. We're convinced of it, but it will be even more obvious to everyone. I get back to, again, we talk about this week with Robin, and that's the next week video. But the change of AI will also make developers with a much more wider perspective on the product development. And so, even though it did not make a lot of sense to just give specifications to people and so on, it will become even less and less logical and useful. And the role will be more about, okay, these are the kind of insights, which has make sense. What should we focus on? And yes, of course you prepare it, but yeah, it's more like in order to challenge them than to give them what to
Correct.
do. And I know something we put on the table sometimes. It's of course, hashtag no estimates.
Yes.
And one way we have to put it, it's estimate the value you want out of it,
Instead
and
of
put it like a budget, and it really frames the discussion differently when you're just not. It's the usual way. It's like everyone we want to max out. I want this, and I want all the details because I want to be sure of that. And so the developers don't want to be taken badly. So he also thinks about all the bad way it can go and so on. And he adds some buffers and so on. When you just say it honestly, we don't expect more money than this. So if we kind of translate it in time, you would spend on that. If you spend more than 3 days on this, we don't do it.
Yeah.
And when you frame it that way, you get directly into collaborating. Okay, so maybe we can find some solution that would bring this value or part of this value, and which would fit under 3 days. And that's...
It's a very good one. So I can tell you actually a concrete story when I did this, where I made a big. So once I worked at a big corporation, and at this big corporation, they had decided to do this $1 million project. And I looked, and it was decided top down, right? So I looked at the project, and I was kind of extremely skeptical if we would make any money out of it. I was really thinking, this is a huge waste of time. So I went to the team, and they told me, so we needed to build something. It would take like 3 months. And I said, that's 3 months we're completely going to throw away. What can we do in 2 weeks? That's all I want to spend on this. Nothing more. And I don't care if the solution is ugly. I don't care if it handles 1 order per day. It was an e-commerce solution, or it can only. And I also don't care if we have to rebuild it one day. I will explain it to stakeholders if it's such a success. Well, what happened? We built it. There were 5 orders in 6 months. And I was like, great, but we saved the company a lot of money. Did anybody notice it? No. Nobody appreciated it.
It's true also that it's more obvious, yes, when you come from the entrepreneur side of things, when you live through the small scale and then we scale to bigger volumes. And so it's kind of obvious when you go through this way that let's do things manually. We'll handle by hand all the cases which don't go right. We'll send emails. We'll even phone people, which is totally fine when you say we have 5 orders, we have to call 5 people. It does work, that's okay. And developers, software developers who don't have been through this experience often are more like, we have to manage all cases right. We have to automate everything, which is not to say it's a bad thing. You should always think about automation, but always in relation to the volume you get. And often, I think that's one of the most, when we talk about lean startup, what are the MVPs? That's always the same example, which is given. I think you had some automated assistant, but at first it's just someone answering on the phone. And
correct.
That definitely works. And actually you get even more feedback by talking directly to your leads. And it becomes more obvious to get on these discussions. Again, when you say it bluntly, we don't expect to spend more than X money or days or sprints or whatever on this, because and it leads to iterate. Because again, in your case, if he had shown a tremendous usage, you would have been happy to learn that and do another version of the
happy
product.
to rebuild it. So I think the key thing here is there's this quote: "Premature optimization is the root of all evil." This Donald Knuth, famous.
True.
But I think there's as well, like Reid Hoffman. You know what he always says? He says, "Do things that don't scale." That's what you should be doing. And when you start, because the biggest risk is not that your technical solution doesn't work, it's that nobody cares about what you're building. That's the biggest risk, not the technical solution. We can make the technical solution work. Most startups don't die because the technical solution doesn't work. They die because nobody cares about the technical solution. And that's a key difference, in my opinion.
On the other hand, one very difficult thing is for technical people, CTOs in startup scale-up, is, it's to have the proper adjustment between focus on business and cleaning, scaling, rebuilding for scalability for future. Because we also often see in the startup that survived that they waited way too long, and they are now 10 years, 20 years later still dragging an enormous legacy stuff, and they just don't know how to get over it. So it can be done, but there is some there is a lot of phases, and each phase not the same need. But
no, you're absolutely right.
It's a common plague to have, and we also love these big companies, Amazon, Google, whatever, and they also share a lot on what they do, and often we don't realize that they just solved a problem that only they have. Nobody in the world, or very few companies in the world, have the same scalability problems that Amazon have on AWS or things like that, and it's also very common. It's like microservices, as it's a good tool, but when you scale, not when you begin.
No, I've seen that mistake a lot.
I have a last question.
Yeah, and maybe we'll talk about the news before closing the live.
But what last question? You're okay with that?
Yeah.
So, we talk a lot with Jean-Pierre, with you, with the Scrum Life community, about how to give product management skills to the team. And so in relation with that, do you think that maybe in the next Scrum Guide, the role of product owner will disappear? Or not?
No, I actually don't think that. And it's not because it's not possible. You know what I mean? That's not the reason. I mean, what I'm going to say now is maybe not going to make people happy, because it's a bit of a, how do you say, cynical view. But the thing is, I don't think they will ever change the Scrum Master or the product owner, because there is so much money tied in the certifications.
Okay.
True.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
It's never going to happen. It's their cash cow. They are not going to kill it. And that's a very cynical view, right? But let's be frank. The product owner should have been called a product manager ages ago, but they're never going to do it.
But maybe in an ideal open source Scrum version of Scrum, this can be.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know if it will disappear, right?
No,
because people like the rules. People like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
If there is a thing, a lot of people are doing. In a lot of teams, we are doing. Often we call that Scrum ban. Like, we're not doing Scrum, but we keep some element from Scrum. And one of the clearly most widely adopted elements of Scrum is the product owner. Even if, of course, often it's not the product owner as it should be. But it's really, it came everywhere. And we talk with, I won't say his name, but with some official Scrum trainer who told us privately that, it's every team should have product ownership and every team should have Scrum mastery, but not necessarily a product owner or a Scrum master. But clearly, that's not something he is allowed to say as a Scrum trainer.
Yeah, that's bad. So but to be frank, right, if it's up to me, this is not a 4-minute conversation, so I apologize. But I don't believe we should separate Scrum and product or Agile and product. They are the same thing. You know what I mean? You cannot do good product management without Agile. So yeah, zero distance with the customer. I agree. But that's why I think if it were up to me, you would have like a product coach. You need to have someone who understands organizations and product management. Splitting it out doesn't make any sense, because how can you build organizations to deliver value if you don't know how to deliver value? It doesn't make sense to me. And that's the main criticism I have, like, of Scrum, which I would change. So yes, it should be blended.
And
That's what I think.
that's interesting because, testing, quality assurance stuff is not specified in the Scrum guide.
No.
And it's quite common to see this switch of role. You're much less a tester into the team, but a coach or quality, test or quality coach acting like a temporary or all the organization, or even if you stay in the team, your goal is not to be responsible for the quality, but to make sure that it's a team responsibility and to give tools, not run the tools and so on.
And just to answer, and then we can keep on with the Eric, the sprinkler. We have talked with Maarten about safe. Maybe this will enter in the part 2 of the interview.
So do I want to talk about safe? No, I don't want to talk about safe. Like, it's always my worst nightmare when I get safe questions. When I give a presentation, I just don't know what to answer, because I just tell them, like, I don't know what to answer, because, like, whatever safe says is not how I look at the world. So yeah, so good luck.
All right, we have a few minutes left. Maarten, thanks a lot for being there. It has been again a real pleasure, and we'll just conclude the session with some news about Scrum Life. Oh, come on! I will just talk about. We like to talk about on training, and I will. Your book is there. I will talk about on training in English, so just that you have some news about what we're doing. So the training is 10 modules which we do in 4 weeks each. So we are now in the 4th week. We are at the end of the first module, and so yeah, we really push hard our students to create their mandate. What is their mission? What do they have the right to do, the not right to do, and especially go with why. Why am I here for? What is my mission? What will be the indicators that will say that we are doing a good things or not? And so we'll be in the end. And so next week we'll start running with the second module, which will be about transparency. And so of course we'll talk about trust and things like that, without which nothing works. And so we talked about it earlier. Next week it will be a new video about AI is the future of teamworks, agile coaching in the face of the changes that AI brings. Bye everyone. See you next week. And thanks again, Maarten.
See you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.